provides migrants with PPE from the moment they are taken into custody, and migrants are required to keep masks on at all times, including when they are transferred or in the process of being released. Our other protocol is if anyone exhibits signs of illness in CBP custody, they're referred to local health systems for appropriate testing, diagnosis, isolation, and treatment. That is our process.
That's White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki talking about positive COVID-19 cases and what happens with them, the protocol within CBP, HHS. I want to bring in Mark Lamb, a sheriff of Pinal County in Arizona, joining us live. Sheriff, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. Michael Cutler, a retired senior special agent for the INS. Good to see both of you here. Sheriff, I'll start with you on this. Let me just jump into what you've seen. I always like to get a bird's eye view if I can. I know you're in Arizona, but what have you seen at the border in terms of migrants carrying COVID or actually getting testing done? Is that being happened? Is that what you're seeing?
You notice how Jen is using certain terms, PPE. They give them a mask, and then she says, well, they're required to keep it on. Well, there's also a law that says you're not supposed to cross our border illegally, but they did that. They're bringing COVID into this country. There's no two ways about it. That's what we're seeing on the front lines. They're not doing any testing. They're not doing any vaccination for these people. And the majority of the people that are offered vaccination are turning it down anyway down there. So this is what they're letting into our communities across America, and they're busing them all over the country. They're not restricting their flow at all. And this is a problem for us as sheriffs, and it should be a problem for all Americans. They are double talking because they want every American to take precautions, but they're perfectly okay leaving the border open and allowing this nonsense to continue.
Michael Cutler, your thoughts on the immigration system and what's happening specifically there, though, at the U.S.-Mexico border, how this is being handled as far as a pandemic. We are in the midst of that, and as you've heard from the sheriff there, you hear one thing from the press briefing room, but another there at the border. Your thoughts?
Well, it's double talk and double think. The idea of holding two simultaneously conflicting ideas in your mind and accepting both of them. On the one hand, we're being told that Americans need to be vaccinated, possible shutdowns, all these draconian measures. And on the other hand, aliens are being moved from the border throughout the entire country. The Border Patrol is basically now being used by this administration as the final element of the most massive human trafficking operation that we've seen probably in the history of the United States. It undermines public safety. It undermines national security, certainly undermining public health. And I'd like to know where the good news in all of this is for the average American, no matter where we live. The government of the United States is supposed to look out for our safety. How in the world is this administration looking out for our safety when they're doing nothing to stop people from entering the United States who may be infected with the COVID virus and who may have criminal backgrounds or be involved with terrorism? We know that terrorist groups are working with human traffickers throughout Latin America. And the administration is doing nothing to discourage it, but indeed encourage it and then facilitate the aliens' movements from the border throughout the entire country. This places all of America at risk.
Well, Mr. Cutler, I want to ask you about this, and more specifically there in Texas, and then, Sheriff, I'll get to you. But back to you, Michael. The DOJ filed a suit against Texas after the governor banned transporting COVID-infected migrants into Texas towns, which we showed you from the White House talking about that. Attorney General Merrick Garland saying, quote, in our constitutional system, a state has no right to regulate the federal government's operations. And this restriction on the transportation of non-citizens would severely disrupt federal immigration operations. So the question is to you, who's getting it right here? Is it the AG in the federal government, or is it in the state government of Governor Greg Abbott? Michael.
Well, I would argue that it's Governor Abbott who's getting it right. If you go to Title 8, United States Code Section 1324, it prohibits and imposes criminal sanctions against anybody who aids or abets or induces aliens to enter the country illegally or remain illegally thereafter, or transports them after they enter illegally. Now, they're being let in by the administration, but the basis upon which they're being permitted to enter the United States is shaky at best. It makes no sense. If you look at the policies of the Trump administration, the Remain in Mexico policies and all these others, the idea was to cut down on the number of illegal aliens entering the United States to manageable numbers. we are now witnessing the greatest influx on a monthly basis of illegal aliens that we've probably ever seen in the United States during the pandemic, during an economic time of hardship because of the pandemic that led to the closing of businesses and so forth. Again, the question that I would ask any politician, how are your proposals in the best interest of the United States and the citizens of the United States? Because I don't see any benefit to what this administration is doing in terms of where America and Americans are concerned. That's what really should be asked of this administration and, in fact, all politicians.
Well, my question is, if you are coming over infected, let's just say, are you not getting sick? Because we're not hearing about that. Because if you are getting sick, are you being taken to Texas hospitals? And because we hear about Texas hospitals being overrun. And if that's the case, how does a U.S. citizen feel about a non-citizen getting a bed and they're not able to get a bed? And if that's not the case, and you're saying, Sean, you're wrong, the nurses go to them, okay, then where'd you pull the nurses from? Are you pulling them from Texas hospitals as well? How is that being handled? Because I'm not hearing about the immigrants being sick. I'm only hearing about them being tested positive and then being quarantined. Sheriff, your thoughts?
Well, the American taxpayer is footing the bill for all of that. And, you know, I kind of don't like the fact that we're talking about the COVID thing. It is a problem and they're bringing COVID in. But let's go back even further. They're not even supposed to come into this country illegally. Yes. Why are we not stopping them in the first place? Under President Trump's policies, we would have been able to stop the majority of these people from even getting into our country in the first place to where we wouldn't have had to deal with this COVID issue. We're focused on the COVID issue, and I think this administration likes us to focus on it. They're willing to take it on the chin because we're not talking about the core issue is they shouldn't be coming into this country illegally in the first place. And that's what we need our federal government to do. They need to secure the border. They need to go back to President Trump's policies. They worked. I'm telling you, as a sheriff, they worked, and now they're not working. Put your pride aside, go back to President Trump's policies, and let's regain control of the border, and let's protect the American people because that is what it's about. And we as sheriffs are doing that. Go check it out at protectamericanow.com. We as sheriffs are standing up where the federal government is failing us.
Sheriff has spoken. Out of time. Good to see both of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate Sheriff Barkley and Michael Cutler.